on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
We are steady course in the heyday of wild turkey hunting, wild turkey observation, wild turkey populations.
I just see turkey hunting as a really great place for people to get started who want to hunt and a good place for recruitment to begin.
The fall hunt preceded the spring hunt traditionally, utilizing wild turkey dogs.
There's something so fun about the unfolding of the spring turkey hunt, but two birds is like not enough to really, it's not like I'm eating turkey all throughout the year, you know?
The kiki call is it's a whistle.
Turkey habitat is habitat for everything else I love too. It's deer, it's bear, it's like everybody likes turkey habitat. Everybody likes turkeys.
The anti-hunter who hates our guts and hates what we do, we agree on like 98% until we get to how we consume it, right? I want to eat it, you want to take pictures of it. Everything up until that point, we're good.
Episode 156 of the WildFed podcast, Wild Turkeys and Black Swans with Fred Bird, is brought to you by Surthrival. Proper digestion is critical to good health and strong immunity. That's why I'm a huge believer in using Surthrival's colostrum daily in my morning blended drinks, and that's why I take Surthrival digestive bitters with my meals. In addition to being 3 times more effective against flu than vaccine in vivo studies with high-risk patients, bovine colostrum is an outstanding supplement for restoring the delicate lining of the digestive tract, making it a great health support to anyone looking to improve their digestion. And herbal bitters help increase the flow of bile and other digestive juices, helping ensure we extract more nutrition from the foods we eat. Right now until the end of October, Surthrival's flagship colostrum product and herbal digestive bitters are on sale, and the coupon code TREAT20 gets you 20% off those products at surthrival.com. Do you need an antidote to the metaverse? We just launched our newest t-shirt design over at wild-fed.com. It features our antidote to the metaverse tagline on the chest, a WildFed badge on the sleeve, and 2 tarot-style cards juxtaposed on the back, one modeled on the tarot card known as the Fool, who's wearing an Oculus and absent-mindedly walking off the roof of a building with a bag of fast food in one hand and a cell phone in the other. Next to it is a card based on the Magician, who's juggling 4 implements, a fishing rod, a rifle, a trap, and a foraging basket. It represents our belief that a life that includes the outdoors inoculates you against believing that an artificial experience of life could ever replace a natural one. You see, for us, being wild-fed, hunting, fishing, and foraging is about a lot more than just getting our groceries. It's an antidote to the metaverse, an act of rebellion against the transhuman agenda that is leading humanity to abandon the natural world in favor of wearing screens over their eyes to live in a virtual one. We choose the natural over the artificial. We choose an antidote to the metaverse. We choose to be fed by the wild. Check out our new shirt at wild-fed.com. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. Today's podcast guest is Fred Bird, host of the National Wild Turkey Federation's Turkey Call All Access podcast. As an eater of wild turkey meat, maybe I'm a little biased, but I'm a huge believer in the National Wild Turkey Federation's mission. Turkeys were my gateway into hunting itself, and I've initiated several other new hunters by bringing them out for their first birds too. I'm of the opinion that stewarding turkeys and turkey habitat is, in a way, caring for lots of other species too. Turkey habitat is, after all, deer and bear habitat. They share the woods with lots of other game and non-game species that we all love and celebrate. And we hunters aren't the only ones who like eating turkey. They are also an important prey species for a lot of other predators on our landscape too. I've been a member of the National Wild Turkey Federation for years, and I've hosted their New England regional director, Carter Heath, on the show a few times now. So I was eager to meet Fred Bird. Yes, you heard me right. His last name is Bird, their social media manager and the host of their Turkey Call All Access podcast. We really hit it off as we see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and both represent what we see as hunting's rapidly changing demographic. We have a fun and lively conversation, and I expect it'll lead to many more in the future. The fall turkey season is open in a lot of states right now, so I hope you've got the time to get out there and get after them. It's easy for us to take them for granted with such high populations around the country, and it's even easier to forget that just a few decades ago, they were nearly extirpated from the landscape. Thanks to the efforts of conservationists, hunters, and of course the National Wild Turkey Federation, populations are strong and the turkey is here to stay. And with Thanksgiving quickly approaching, now's the time to take advantage of the many opportunities we have across the USA in 49 states to eat what almost became America's national bird. Fred Bird, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Man, I'm excited to get to know you a little bit. Tell me about your role over at the National Wild Turkey Federation.
It is a long and storied career. No, I'm kidding. I'm overstating it a bit. I have been with the Federation for a number of years. I started out as a regional director here in the New England states where I still reside. Left the organization for a little bit, came back, and now I work for our headquarters staff. And let me get it all straight. I am the social media manager, our ecom manager, and I host a little podcast that we do called Turkey Call All Access.
That's the official podcast of
it is, yes, sir.
Wild. That's cool, man. That's really cool. I have this kind of ongoing joke here at the show. I know it's not really a joke. It's like something I've noticed is that sometimes people's last names align really well with their work.
Yeah.
And, just like your last name being Bird is like, is that a stage name? How's that work out?
I will blow your mind and tell you that my middle name is Thomas. So
no,
for Tom. And
no, Tom Bird. No,
I promise you that.
All right, that's too cool, man. What's going on with the turkeys right now? I'm driving around this morning and I'm seeing them all out, and it looks like right now I see hens with poults that are looking pretty mature, and otherwise I'll see groups of Toms and some Jakes sprinkled in there off on their own. Tell us about what's going on this time of year with the turkeys. We're in about mid-October.
Yeah, I mean, here locally for you and I mean, we're getting a bout of weather coming through, and that's always great for turkey sightings, right? Because they're getting out into them open spaces, and they're just more visible. So as these birds are coming out of their brood flocks and getting in, kind of, it's not quite winter yet, but they're getting into those what will become winter flocks as a survival mechanism, as a cooperative workaround to making a living especially up here when it becomes the polar north and everything's frozen, to make a living and eke out a living in some more inhospitable areas of the country, right? So we're not exactly living a life of luxury below the Mason-Dixon line up here. So what people are seeing in their backyards to a great extent is these bachelor groups of young and mature birds coming together. You have dominant type flocks of dominant toms coming together, and again, this all works out as a great survival mechanism. I know Mike Chamberlain covers this, and I think he even put a Turkey Tuesday out on this here recently of kind of what we're seeing as well. And Mike and Brett Collier down at LSU are just fantastic resources and always have good information on this stuff. They are out of the South, Georgia and Louisiana, but well studied.
Where do you follow their work?
I'm sorry.
Where do you follow their work from?
We promote them on our, they do their Turkey Tuesday release. But as it stands right now, as the current voices in wild turkey conservation, I could say, I put a paycheck on it that, Dr. Collier, Dr. Chamberlain are the two voices in the space as it stands today. Chamberlain out of University of Georgia and Brett Collier out of LSU. But there's a whole myriad of wild turkey professionals. We just wrapped up the 12th Wild Turkey Symposium back in June in Asheville, North Carolina. This is an event that occurs every 5 years where wild turkey biologists, professionals get together and have this conversation, the state of the wild turkey, what's going on in research, what are doctoral candidates using for their projects, graduate students, what are they using, what's the focus, what's happening. It was extended a couple years because of COVID and everything that happened there. So it was a 7-year block. And in that time frame, lots going on with wild turkeys in specific parts of the country and declines and things like that. So there's lots to catch up on. Fortunately for us here in the Northeast, we maintain, or we are steady course in the heyday of wild turkey hunting, wild turkey observation, wild turkey populations. Um, so there's a cautionary tale, I'd say, going on throughout the country that here in the Northeast, wildlife managers and professionals ought to be, and are, I know that for a fact, are observing. So that doesn't happen to our flocks here in the Northeast, and we can hopefully hedge that off and not be put in a spot where, do you look at reducing opportunity in the fall? Do you look at rolling back limits in the spring, things like that? I mean, this is very much a quality of life pursuit. When hunters go afield, they want to hear gobbles, they want to see fanning, they want to see beautiful birds, they want to have those interactions. When that starts to wane, it starts to go down, what's the buy-in? And for a lot of folks that are, only able to get out a couple days a week, your state, I mean, my gosh, you can't even hunt half the weekend. That's a real hard thing to sell, right? I mean, if I can only get out on Saturday mornings, and I can't find a turkey to gobble, that's a tough thing. It's a hard animal to hunt, right?
I got so many things I want to say. One is like, you're right, we can't hunt Sundays here in Maine. So Saturday's our only day. Now, as a guy who gets to set his own schedule, kind of like it because I can really take advantage of those weekdays and no one's out there,
Sure.
And it's that thing. I was just hunting this weekend, bow hunting for deer on some of the islands off the coast of Maine. And it's a mission to get out there, So it's like I got to trailer my boat several hours, then I got a boat out to the islands, anchor, then I got to canoe all the gear into the islands. It's quite a thing, but I get out there and there's a guy's got a tree stand, and I got that thing going on in my head where you're thinking like, oh, who's this guy? Right. Who's this joker? And then I'm thinking about how hard it was to get out there. I'm like, he's probably really cool. But, but in my head, it's like that thing of like that competitiveness, So obviously I love there being other turkey hunters. And for your work, you've got to think more about it than I do, promoting it. But like, I can kind of take advantage of it because it does get a little bit packed, especially early in the spring season. I wanted to comment on a couple other things. You talked about sort of the heyday up here and some declines in other places. One question I have is, let's say that I've got a tank and I'm putting food in there. I got mice in there, and like I've got 100 mice, and I put in 100 mice worth of food. I'm occasionally that population is going to surge up, right? It's going to hit 120, and it's going to die back down because of the amount of food. It's like the carrying capacity. Sometimes it might go down to 80, but it's going to always hover around that 100. Are these declines we're seeing really declines, or did our turkey population, because of all the conservation efforts and reintroduction efforts, did it surge and we kind of had a surplus past carrying capacity? Or are these declines indicative of issues either with the hunt or with habitat or something like that?
So it's a fantastic point, and one I often make, and that's, as hunters who aren't super wonkish about this, they go by what they see out their window, what they see when they're driving around. So they can only discern from their, kind of like that Monday morning armchair quarterback kind of observation that if I see turkeys, they're good. If I don't see turkeys, we got a problem. And to your point, there definitely is and was some of that. Like, we did such a good job of reintroducing a bird that was extrapolated from the landscape, almost completely going back, 100 years at this point in the 1920s, where you had populations of birds in the Southeast, and then some of the Gulf states had some, and that was pretty much it. And now you look at it, I mean, holy smokes, we have huntable populations in 49 states, many of the provinces in Canada, and give it some time because someone's going to figure out a wrinkle for Alaska. That's pretty remarkable. And in places where, I guess you could almost classify them as introduced because they're non-native species in these areas, but they've, these Merriams and Rios have found a way to eke out a living in some of these more arid areas. The efforts by the state agencies in conjunction with volunteers, NWTF staff, and bio professionals, working towards that march to 2000 and getting huntable populations and getting these robust populations back on the landscape. Yeah, you're going to have a peak for sure. I mean, there's going to be that apex, your high point on a curve. And at some point it's got to come down, right? Because exactly like you articulated, there's got to be a carrying capacity balance. Plus, you got that much food on the landscape in the turkey itself. Everything likes a turkey sandwich. You're going to see these ebb and flows with predation, right? So all of a sudden, everybody's got a problem with fur bears or bobcats and coyotes and these boogeyman of the woods. Well, it's the classic. You go into your freshman year of wildlife management, and the classic study is the lynx hair study, right? And then you see these curves, these ups and downs, these valleys and peaks on a very cyclical basis. When there's a lot of rabbits, here comes a lot of cats, and then when there's a lot of cats, there's not a lot of bunnies. So there is that at play.
Then cats die back due to lack of bunnies, and that brings the bunnies back up, right? So it just kind of seesaws back and forth
for sure. But what you're seeing in parts of the country here, specifically, the Gulf states, you've had the peak, you had your balance, but now you're seeing a decline as well. So you're looking at loss of habitat. You're looking at nest predation. So when a hen is and this is remarkable, right? I can go back to the symposium, and there was a study on nest phenology, and studying basically the layman's terms of it all is who's doing the breeding and who's being successful. Mm-hmm. and it blows your mind, and it still blows my mind when I talk about this, is that like you have a herd bull in an elk herd, you got one dominant bull. Well, in turkeys, you got one dominant tom in an area that's doing all the breeding. Now, couple that with there's 20% of the hens on the landscape are doing all the poult recruiting.
Oh, wow.
That is an amazing statistic. And you have all these other variables, predation, weather, habitat loss, or available habitat that is specific to the nesting requirements for these birds. And it's amazing we have turkeys at all. It's really crazy.
Two things come up for me. One is just mast crop, because like a year like this where it's just a meager acorn year, I'd say, right? It's not like a great there's some acorns. It's not like we've had some years in recent past where there's basically no feed. But a year like this, you're going to see birds everywhere because there's not a lot to eat in the woods, right? So now it's like they're out in the fields, they're on the side of the highway. But then if you have a really good mast crop, I imagine to the public you were mentioning before, that sort of hunter science, that science of it, where it's like, hey, I'm not seeing any turkeys. It's like, well, there's smorgasbord on the floor in the forest. So it could be that sometimes you think the population's high as a hunter, not as a biologist, but as a hunter, because there's not much food around, and that means you're seeing them. The other thing I wanted to talk about too was if there's nest predation, a lot of times, like this late fall, I remember people being like, wow, I'm seeing baby turkeys and it's so late in the year. And it's like, well, that's because she had nest predation most likely.
Right.
And then she had another brood. Right. So it's not like if the nest is predated upon, the birds are just like, oh, that's it. Like they're going to go back and they're going to breed again and they're going to lay again. Right. So, and those of us who've hunted late in the season know that it's not like all the mating activity's done right after those first few weeks. Like there's birds still being bred. So could you
anecdotally, I've seen it in the 4th of July holiday. So.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So yeah, maybe you could speak to those two things, food on the landscape and how that affects this. And then also nest predation versus sort of this late season breeding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as far as like you said, if there's a lot of land, excuse me, a lot of food on the landscape, they don't have to travel far. It's available to them. They're not going to be concentrated. Like bear hunters, right? That's a great example. I think up here is that on those bad mast crops, like if you find that one oak tree or that one beech tree that's producing on that ridge, hang tight because you're going to see your share of bears. But on other years,
or they blow it out on the baits, right? Because now the bears have nothing else to eat.
Exactly right. Because those bears, they want nothing to do with your Dunkin' Donuts or your granola. And the truth of it,
there's acorns and beech nuts around.
Exactly right. So same thing with the turkeys. If their forage is concentrated in an area, like you said, you're probably going to see more of them. Now, what was good in a way about this year as far as turkey recruitment goes, again, around here, I can't speak. I think a lot of the country experienced drought, but up here in the Northeast, we had considerable drought up until about the last month, which was perfect timing for poults because their nests didn't get rained out or get too cold and wet, right, and damp and kill those little tiny birds for that first hatch. They had opportunity to forage for grasshoppers and the insects that are on the grasses and these areas that are perfect brood habitat. So as far as that goes, and why people may be seeing more this year than they did last year is because the conditions were really right to recruit poults and have those numbers up. I think, again, this is anecdotal science for me, but my observations here locally, I think I saw an average of 6 poults to a hen in a different brood grouping. So if I saw on average 2 hens, there was roughly a dozen poults with them. That's pretty good considering we look at nest recruit or poult recruitment. I think the statistic is under 2, right? So it's like 1.8 birds recruited for the year. That's a success.
Who survived to maturity and are there exactly the next season.
Right.
Wow. Right. 1.8 per hen per clutch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's roughly around that. Don't quote me on that number, but I know it's less than 2 and it's more than 1 and it's somewhere right around in there.
But what is considered, do you know offhand what's considered a full clutch of eggs?
The turkeys will lay, I think, over a dozen. I think have been documented. Wow. I think the average is 10 to a dozen.
Okay, so 1.8. That's just a good thing for people to remember because, and lest we get into thinking like that's because of hunters, because it's not, right? It's like these are an important food source for so many of the predators on the landscape, right? And that's that whole thing of compensatory versus additive mortality is. I imagine the goal for our wildlife managers is to keep us in that compensatory mortality where we're taking some of those birds who are going to get taken no matter what.
Right. And most of the wildlife, I don't want to say most, that's not fair. All the wildlife managers and professionals do a really good job of establishing seasons based on exactly that. Now, I may have personal umbrage with certain states and their liberal seasons, especially in the fall, but I'll kind of leave it at that.
Oh, well, let me tear into that a little bit because I like it. What state are you live in?
I'm next door to you. I'm in
New Hampshire, right? So here in Maine, we recently opened it up to 5 birds in the fall.
Sure did.
This was a shock to me because, of course, 2 birds in the spring. Mm-hmm. The turkey hunt's so interesting because, as a meat hunter, there's more going on to the spring turkey hunt than meat, obviously. How do I say it? There's something so fun about the unfolding of the spring turkey hunt. And so the 2 birds is like not enough to really, it's not like I'm eating turkey all throughout the year,
Right.
But it's a hunt that I just love. It's the first hunt I ever did. I just love it. Now the fall for me has been a chance to get a couple more birds in the freezer. But when they opened it up to 5, for me, it came out of nowhere. And I know Kelsey Sullivan, our bird manager here, and
fantastic.
I interviewed him a bunch. I'd been out in the field with him. I did not see this coming. Now, I've asked a lot of people about this, and what I've pieced together, maybe if you see it different, let me know. But it seems to me that there are those people who get up in the morning and see 50 birds in their yard, and they're like, "Oh my God, there's too many turkeys here." And they're all in places where guys can't be in there with shotguns.
Sure.
So then you go to the places where you can hunt and you're not seeing those massive flocks. So are they managing for urban and suburban areas where these birds where large populations of these birds are sort of protected from the hunt? Or was there any other rationale? Because it almost seems like this rule was put in place to ease landowners' minds about the population being high in some suburban areas.
So as I understood it, and again, I'm not speaking from an organizational standpoint. I'm speaking as a licensed hunter in Maine.
Yeah, great.
And some of the things I
not the official position of the National Wild Turkey Federation.
That's exactly right. Was privy to was, you had some agricultural interests, especially on the coast there of Maine that had concerns. That again, the turkey ends up there. And then the turkey ends up being a victim of the time of the day it's up, right? Mm-hmm. It keeps the same hours as the farmers. So yes. if a farmer is seeing his cows get sick because of the silage that is ingested, and he sees the turkeys in the silage, well, everything likes mashed corn, man, to include raccoons, coyotes, and everything else that's a nocturnal animal that's out at night defecating in that silage. Because the farmer doesn't see it and only sees the turkeys, they attribute to the waste product, the byproduct of the turkey, saying, "Oh, the turkeys must be making my cow sick." Conversely, I go with your vegetables and your produce. I see turkeys in there nosing around. They must be taking the buds and the fruit, when in fact the turkeys are helping you as exterminators, most of the time cleaning your plants of bugs and pests. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to take their share of some grapes or blueberries here or there, but your wild turkey is not decimating the blueberry crop in Greater Maine.
Right.
So there's that at play, I think, and I lost my train of thought. What was the original?
We were just
part
sort of talking about how we ended up at this 5-bird limit.
Right. So there is that that part of the equation. I suspect that came about, and Maine just came on really well and boasted really good habitat. Now, okay, so come back to the urban birds, right? So I know wildlife professionals, especially around here locally, are well aware of it. I mean, we have the same thing here in New Hampshire and downtown Concord and Manchester. These are our bigger, urban environments. There's wild turkey populations, and they make their living off of bird seed and grass clippings and things like that. Nothing's really bothering them. No one's hunting them. There's no hunter pressure. You can't legally hunt them in these places. So what's a wildlife manager to do? Naturally, people are like, wow, just go trap and put them in boxes, bring them up North Country, and I think we're going to be okay. Well, in theory, that sounds great. However, and I asked this question because I kind of had the same train of thought. Like, man, we are challenged. Like, take Crown of Maine. Maine's a great spot to play this out. If you look at the Jackman area, Eustis, kind of going up towards the border, there's populations of turkeys, but I still think it remains a one turkey spring bag limit.
It's just not the habitat for them, right? You start getting up into
it's a bad winter.
Maine is another state altogether from the southern part, right? You get past like Bangor, and you're into like a completely different environment.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So the armchair biologist is like, yeah, just trap and transfer. Okay, theoretically it sounds great, but when you ask the professionals, the biologists, and I asked Doug Little, who's our district biologist here in the East for NWTF, I said, Doug, why can't we just do this? Why can't we go into Revere and Boston and move some of these problematic turkeys that we see chasing postmen and put them in areas that are, on the Connecticut River Valley where there's a challenged population, especially going into Vermont. So we could do that, but what you're going to have happen is like back to the bears. You have these birds that are habituated and they're programmed to eke out a living in these urban buildups. So no matter where you relocate them, they're going to find people. They're going to find a false sense of security and food source, and they're going to be the same problem somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I was like, holy crap. Like it never even occurred to me, but it's like the same thing with bears. Yeah. You have a bear that's completely habituated, whether because people have purposely habituated that animal or just because it was eking out a living and it can't survive without that. And then you end up destroying that bear.
Because I think they call it recidivism, right? When they go back to that problem behavior, right? You try to move them. Right. It's sort of like somebody who gets out of jail and goes and commits the same crimes, and then you keep trying to rehabilitate them, but they won't. That's sort of programmed into them. I want to ask you about the fall hunt as well, because for me, the fall hunt has been two things. It's sometimes opportunistic, so I bump into birds. A lot of times I'll be squirrel hunting, and sometimes I'll just carry a shotgun on my back because I'll be out squirrel hunting. I'll bump into them in the same kind of habitat. The other thing I'll do is I'll like spot and stalk. So especially on a nice rainy day like this, or a day where the leaf litter is really moist and it's quiet, and I can kind of sneak around and I'll work my way up to a field edge or spot in the woods where they are, and see if I can get one or two of them. But I've not really been exposed. It's like, I think everybody's probably pretty familiar with the classic spring hunt. The fall hunt in its more classic form is something I just don't know anyone that does. And I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what that fall hunt looks like when dogs are involved and all of that. Because I remember reading the rule book and being like, dogs, like how do you hunt? Like, what are they doing? Pointing? Like, what are they doing?
Right.
Anyway, talk us through that a little bit. And where is that happening? Because I don't really know anyone who does it or meet anyone or see anyone posting about that or anything like that.
It's a fantastic tradition. And actually the fall hunt, I believe in my wild turkey hunting history, preceded the spring hunt tradition.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty awesome. Now, fast forward to 2022, where, people are inundated by outdoor media and influence. Everything is that big ungulates, things with shiny antlers, things like that. So yeah, the turkey becomes a targeted opportunity, but it wasn't that way. And there's a subculture with a very rich tradition of utilizing wild turkey dogs. The Boykin Spaniel, I think, that was bred and still comes out of South Carolina, was, I think, the first certified turkey dog, or bred specifically for the art of busting flocks.
We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, hunting is as ancient as humanity itself, and through most of our history, it wasn't just a physical pursuit, it was a spiritual one. One of the ways that human beings came to understand ourselves and our place in the wild world that sustained us. Hunting's still an incredible tool for personal transformation today, helping you discover more about yourself, your environment, the animals you share the world with, and even helping you to develop a deeper understanding of life and death itself. Hunting can help you find your place in the community of life. But you could hunt all your life and never find that kind of transformation. It takes deliberate practice, awareness, and sometimes initiation. That's why my friend Monsell Denton created Sacred Hunting. Sacred Hunting brings new or even experienced hunters out onto the landscape to stalk, harvest, and field dress animals in a retreat-type setting, in conjunction with sweat lodges, entheogenic plant medicine ceremonies, and strong intention setting that prepares hunters for a lifelong spiritual relationship with themselves, the land, and the animals they hunt. If you want to hunt as a tool for transformation, check out sacredhunting.com. Monsell and his team will guide you through beginner hunts, and more experienced hunters will find unique opportunities available across the country and globe. There's only a few spots available for each hunt, so go to sacredhunting.com and complete their 2-minute application. Discounts are available if you let them know you heard about them on the WildFed podcast. Again, go to sacredhunting.com, and to learn more about Monsell and Sacred Hunting, check out episode 135 of the WildFed podcast. Now, back to the show.
So in essence, the hunter goes out with his dog, his or her dog, and they find a flock, typically a brood flock, a young of the year. And those turkeys don't know any better. So they send the dog in, bust the flock, sit right down, and then wait, and then begin to do a series.
Oh, hang on, dog goes in a bag after, right? Like the
so
dog.
Some people do. They'll
put him over,
put
right?
a cover over him. Yeah. But I as I understand it, most of these guys and gals that train their dogs, they're very disciplined.
Okay,
and,
so the dog will just sit tight once you.
Dog knows to come back, sit tight, no whimpering, be quiet. Because now, once that happens, you essentially become mama hen. And it's one of the more challenging calls to learn, not only on a mouth call, but on a slate or a box call. I know some guys that can run kiki calls, and the kiki call is it's a whistle. I'll do it very rudimentarily here. So that's just it. It's a kiki run, and this is an assembly call. It says, "Hey, I'm lost. I'm looking for you. Come find me." And it brings everybody back together. So the technique is scatter the flock, work on and play on the ignorance of brand new birds, and bring them back. Now, eventually the whole flock. So if there are mature birds in there, if there are, super jakes in there, and you want to take a bearded bird and not kill a little 8 or 10 pound fryer, you can wait them out and still work on the tendencies and the biology of that flock, and then bring the whole flock back together. If this works, if you read Tom Kelly, back in the day, they used to run at him and just shoot their shotguns up in the air as they were making a move, and just scatter them that way. And, in 2022, $15 TSS is not being shot in the air. So,
oh man, whenever a guy's like, "Dude, you think I could get a couple of those rounds? Sure, I can't find any." It's like, bro, you know what these cost me? Like, are you kidding me?
Stuff's gold.
Yeah, man, it's hard to get. Wow. So are people doing that up here in the Northeast that you know?
So there is, yeah.
We have to connect with somebody on that.
We featured a fella here. Let me. I got all of our magazines here, right? I got to find the edition, because we featured. Let's find it here. What I want to say an episode edition of our turkey call was it? Going back to September, October of last year.
Oh, it was a dog on the cover, right? One of those spaniels.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I want to say the fella's name is it Brent Berry. We featured him in it. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of folks, especially Pennsylvania, and you got to check, right? So if you went to, we provide a guide every fall, a fall hunt guide on nwtf.org. So we have a brand new, shiny new website that's fantastic, super intuitive, user friendly. Our staff put a lot of time and effort into it. In the Lifestyle Hub, or one of the resources, there's a whole fall guide that will tell you where you can hunt turkeys, where you can hunt turkeys with dogs, without dogs, and so on. And it's a really nice resource. So we highlighted the Boykin in that article, but if you go on that same outdoor hub there that we have, there's a lot of articles that discuss the very topic.
Okay, I'm going to dig around in there because I would love to make an episode of the TV show about that. It'd be cool to work with somebody on that and go out and experience it. If you think of somebody who's like the right fit for that kind of, the right fit for TV, let me know, because it's something I'd like to do. And I just want to go back to what you said about the website and the magazine in particular. I'll just going to give a little plug for the National Wild Turkey Federation.
Yeah, thanks.
In the last couple of years, then that magazine got redesigned.
Yes.
Because how often does it come out? Do I get one?
It's bi-monthly.
Every 2 months, right?
Yeah.
They're beautiful, man. They're the kind of, compared to the old magazine, which was a bit more like how old hunting magazines were, or they were during that, the 90s and 2000s and stuff. This new one is the kind of thing where you're like, oh, I'm keeping an anthology of these. Like, these will be nice to revisit.
When we went through our brand evolution in the last couple of years, like you said, so too there was an evolution or a reimagining of the book, of the magazine, the bi-monthly magazine that you get with an annual subscription, and it's got a great feel.
There's that texture to the cover. Yeah, it's got that satin finish, and then it's got that, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like you're touching shark skin or something.
It's really well done. Our editor, Matt Stewart, does a really good job of managing that publication with his staff and working with our communication staff and our writers.
Yeah, quality articles, great really good photography. I also like, you guys do a good job of playing up the work you're doing without overwhelming the reader with it, because obviously the reader's there mostly to just read articles about turkey hunting, but then you position the work you guys do really well. And I love the way you break the United States up into those, is it five?
Six regions.
Yeah, I really like that, because obviously ecology is super complicated, and culturally we're not a very ecologically literate people. So teaching ecology but simplifying it down like that makes it very accessible, I think, to the user, and it helps us to think about turkey habitat in a way that's really digestible. So I'm really impressed. I love the new logo. I love the brand affiliations. I just think the National Wild Turkey Federation's gone in a really good, they've done a good job of modernizing, because sometimes people don't nail it when they try that. Also, I just want to say, this isn't like the plan to plug like this, but I'm just going to do it again. I think it's $35 a year to be a member. And
that's it.
Yeah, and you get that magazine and some other free stuff. I just think it's a good value, because I think it's poor form to be a hunter and not be affiliated with some kind of conservation group to put a little bit of money back in besides your hunting license. So it's very affordable. You get the magazine and access to all this stuff. It seems like a really good buy-in. But anyway, yeah, I'm interested in getting out on that fall hunt, because I enjoy going out and, like I said, sort of ambushing birds or whatever. It's kind of a fun hunt, but I'd love to see this other aspect of it. Because the turkey hunt, both that spring and fall hunt, they have a little bit of that gentlemanly kind of, or genteel, old school kind of bird hunting thing going on. I just love that,
Yeah, we actually are rolling a series of videos we recorded last fall that they're currently being distributed every Thursday. I think we had one come out last night as we're recording this on Friday. And then we got maybe one or two more. It was called the Beyond the Strut series. There is an episode out in New York with one of our really fantastic and a personal friend of mine, Andrew Noble, who has a Boykin that he trained up. He goes out in that episode with Doug Little, our biologist, and they go hunt. You can always go check that out on our social channels as well. But yeah, there's a whole series on that. But yeah, for us, I can set you up. That's an easy thing to do.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love that. You guys did a story a couple of editions back. I remember about a dude in New York City who'd go hunting, and I remember the picture of him getting on the subway.
Cliff.
He's got like a bow case.
Yeah,
and he's all in camo, and he's on the subway. I just think that is. I've got another friend who hunts out in New York City as well, and he said same thing. Gets on the train, goes. I just think that is there's something so cool about that, because I live out in it. I could start right in my backyard, so I'm just used to that life. But the idea of people getting on a subway, especially in the current sort of, you know, socio-political environment where hunting is not seen in the best light by a lot of urban folks. So the idea of riding the subway in your camo with a bow case to me is so badass. I just think that's really awesome.
I will say, and I think as a industry or space professional, I think you're probably inclined to agree with me. What we noticed, you know, these silver linings over last 2.5 years, COVID, was the emergence of the emergent hunter, the adult onset hunter, right? There was a real understanding of crap can go sideways pretty quick. And how do I get water? How do I feed myself? How do I keep the lights on? And that became very real for a lot of people. So all of a sudden you saw our participation numbers go up, and, you know, people are, and again, going back to the symposium, one of the fellows out of Kentucky did a whole paper on this of the COVID hunter, and the study continues. What does that bear out for our R3 efforts? What does that bear out for our recruitment efforts? But getting back to the point of, you know, sourcing your own food, and much of what you are about and what you do, you know, it made a lot of sense. You know, you see a guy like Cliff Cadet and people in these amazing concrete jungles that it literally takes, with mass transit, an hour to get out of your city centers just to get to a piece of public land.
Yeah.
That's madness. But there are these huge population centers of people that have an interest. That COVID period was like, okay, I need to, you know, do my business or get off the pot kind of deal, because this is a skill set I need to have. It's one that we've all had in our DNA, going back to, you know, spitting on hands in caves and drawing on the caves walls, right? So this isn't new to humanity. It's new in the 21st century to a lot of people. It drives me crazy. You know, Cliff talk, I just had him on the podcast, our last episode, and, you know, talking about what it means to, he likes to say, you know, having hunters that look like me. And you know, what we're talking about is Cliff's an African-American fella with Caribbean descent. And, you know, what that means for modern day folks that, you know, they're a minority status. And they, you know, all they see is this meme of a hunter, this Elmer Fudd-ish kind of meme. And it's just backwoods rednecks and, you know, trucks and Budweiser cans, which is, it's a complete opposite of who we are, right? Yeah. But there's a level of intimidation. There's a comfort level. So it helps to see people that look like you. That's what Cliff says. So, you know, when you hear that statement, you're like, but man, we've been doing this since the dawn of time. This isn't new to black and brown people or people anywhere. Like, it's actually
that when you look, though, it's what's so fascinating to me is if you look at, let's say, people whose descent is African, 400 years ago, they were living very close to the landscape, hunting and gathering still. And so, whereas you look at European people, we've domesticated ourselves thousands of years ago.
Totally.
So what's fascinating to me is that typically hunting is seen as this white pursuit, but most recently was not. It was most recently the pursuit of people who were still living much closer to the land. And then a lot of those people got kind of displaced from their lifestyle, but like, that's not that far away in people's lineages. So that's what's interesting is it feels so foreign today, but that's all cultural baggage, not reality. You know?
And that's like in the last, you know, you think about it, 50 years, look at outdoor media going from, you know, your Outdoor Writer Society, and that was pretty much it, waiting on Peterson's or some bow hunting magazine or whatever it was. And now, you know, you fast forward to the early 2000s with outdoor channels. And, you know, I think I remember seeing like Greg Ritz and Tom Miranda on ESPNs when I was a kid on Sunday mornings. And now it's freaking everywhere, right? So, and if people even migrated away from the traditional spaces, and you see this revolution of outdoor media on YouTube and with the podcast, and it's so much in your space if you want it to be. And with that comes the diversification of our community, which I think is fantastic. And it starts breaking down, you know, what's been built up over the last 50 years. And like you just said, you have these populations of people that are way more close to it and have been in the terms of humanity, on a historical sense than, you know, white Europeans, hunting on the king's land by permission, chasing stag, right?
Yeah, wow, well said. Yeah, and now we see, I mean, sometimes I think we might have overcorrected for the increase in female hunters. When I look at the magazines and stuff, I'll be like, wow, it's like all the ads are women now. And not all, obviously, but such a big percentage that sometimes I'm like, is it that many women coming on, or is there so much interest in this rising female recruitment that's happening? But you're definitely seeing demographic changes. And then, I saw an ad the other day for Monday Nights on Outdoor Channel, and there I was with all of the characters from, all their big names. And I was like, wow, that's funny, because I feel so alternative. I have long hair and piercings and tattoos, and I'm just like from this other world, and there I am on Outdoor Channel, opening up for Meat Eater. It's like, okay, this is cool. And then I keep joking with people. I always say, are you ready for the crop of hunters with face tattoos? Because you know where this thing's headed. Like,
oh man,
you're going to have like in 10 years, it's going to be almost unrecognizable, because at some point the call to hunt comes to people, and they're going to have come from what appear to be radically different origin stories than what we think of as hunting, I guess, stereotypically. So pretty exciting changes on it.
And as a community, by and large, you have to get over that, right? Like whatever your perceived comfort level is, because the standard bearers are aging out, biology's catching up with them, and eventually they're going to be worm food. So you're not going to have a say. So what do you do? Who do you replace it with? You don't have you can't be so selective and discriminatory, not discriminatory based off of race and ethnicity, but perceived look, like a guy like me or a guy like you, people would look at us because I'm all tatted up too, and my hair is getting pretty damn long. And people would look at us like, well, what are you doing out here, you hipster hunter, in your buckle shoes and your tight skinny jeans? Like, well, no, you're twisting it for no reason here. And you have these conversations, you find out people are very pure in their motivations, and our storytelling, even, right? Like, well, you do a great job of it. Renilla does a good job. And that's why these programs are successful and the mediums are on, is because you guys do a great job. And it's not a 23-minute NASCAR-esque promo of naming all your sponsors and kissing their ass. It's, here's what I do, here's why I do it, and here's how I tell the story. And it's not about inches and pounds and all this craziness that it was for a decade and a half, 2 decades, but that's what sold, and that's what sold sponsorships, and it made people a lot of money. So there's,
and kept it alive too, right? Like, in a big way, like, so there's
double-edged sword,
Yeah, that's it. I think so too. And I'm grateful to inherit this rich legacy. It went through kind of a weird, but it's, it's like music did that, movies, fashion, sometimes you look back, you're like, ooh, 80s and 90s were pretty rough, but we got through it.
That's coming back. Who's fantastic to talk to this stuff about, and I've had the pleasure of doing it multiple times, is Cuz Strickland from Mossy Oak. Cuz was at the beginning of it, carrying around those big giant 20-pound cameras on his shoulder with the likes of Toxie Hayes and Will Primos and stuff, and filming down their turkey hunts and deer hunts. That man has literally seen it all.
Wow. Yeah.
As far as outdoor media goes. And talk about a fellow that just tries to keep up with the times. No matter how old he gets, he sees the relevance and the importance of adapting and overcoming and shifting how you storytell and who you're engaging with. And he'll tell you, like, for an old guy, he can't believe the audience he has, and they're all so young when he looks at his demos.
Oh, it's cool.
And that's, instead of having this huge ego and this air about you of I'm so-and-so and I've been here, done that. No, he's very humble and is energized by the youth movement. And, I think that's, if people could see a guy like Cuz and other, air finger quote leaders in the space do that, we got a good future, and we'll be able to work off the foundation those folks have laid, as long as we don't screw it up.
What do you think about as far as demographics go? Here's another change that I see underway is one of the stereotypes has been, hunters are all fat, overweight, all they want to do, riding the 4-wheeler to the tree stand, kind of a picturing, people who don't want to move or do anything. But I'm seeing this tremendous fitness integration happening across the space. And I see you train, I love to train, I think on the national level, and I see him get all this. It's like people get really butthurt about Cam Haynes' fitness. I noticed this thing where people get like,
jealousy, man.
I know they bitch about it. And it's like, take a step back, dude, and just look like, wow. I mean, the guy's incredible,
I love what that dude says when he's like, must be nice. I'm like, that's the biggest, like, low pro middle finger you can give to someone. A total stud about things. It's fantastic. Yeah, must be nice. Must be nice to get up at 4:00 every day, break your balls for 2 hours, go to work, come back and do it again. And like, it's Yeah, it's jealousy. I mean, that's the only thing I can come up with. I remember, when I started down that path 4 years ago now.
A fitness or?
Yeah, a fitness. I'm, 5'5", 5'6" on a good day, depending on what doctor I got. And I got up to 200 friggin' pounds. And I used to tell myself, man, I carry good. Nah, bro, you didn't. You didn't carry good. And the day, two things were a catalyst for me. I bent over to tie my shoe and I came up winded. And then I think around the same day, Rogan had shared out a crosscut, like an MRI of a quad of a leg. And here was a fat man's leg, and here was a sucker that got after his leg. And it was just this lean, dense muscle. And the dude was like elderly versus this other elderly guy who was just all fat and Twinkie like. And I was like, I do not want to get old and be the Twinkie guy. What I tell people now is like when the predator aliens come, like I don't want to be the fat deer they're chasing because I'm going to be marbled. I want to be super lean and tough and hard to chew,
pleasant to eat. Yeah, you know what I notice? When you take apart a big game animal, if you get them when they're really fat, you find all of that intra-abdominal fat in and around the organs, like the kidney type fat. Now, when you start to pile that stuff on, you squeeze what's above your abdominal wall, and it feels the same. It's like, hey, I'm not gaining weight; it's the same. But under the muscle layer around your organs, when you start getting that fat acts like a giant hormone producer, like producing estrogen, making you even fatter, like making you. And it's easy to tell yourself you're not gaining weight when you don't feel extra adipose fat over the muscle layer. You know what I'm saying? So your waist is getting bigger, bigger, bigger. When you burn that stuff down, you really trim up. It's like, oh God, it feels really, really good. Yeah. And as far as hunting goes, it's so pragmatic and practical. Like I'm just completely a better hunter when I'm in shape. Totally. Moving through the woods. Oh my goodness. Right.
I noticed it a year into it, I think. So I say over 4 years ago. So I started in 2018, in August of 2018. That was like, my air finger quote, new birthday. And I don't mean to be all kitschy about it, but that's how I feel. I was like this rebirth, right? So August of 2018, I started this whole lifestyle shift for me. And then not that spring, so not the spring of 2019, but really probably the fall of 19, spring of 2020, I was like, I'm a new man. I was fleet of foot. I'm running and gunning like I never run and gun before in the turkey woods. And it was just, all of a sudden it like kind of hit me. I was gobsmacked. I was like, wow, this is nice.
Yeah.
I'm not tired. I'm not sleepy. I'm not out of breath. I'm not, dreading going to the next spot for my next sit with all this stuff in my vest. Cause I do carry a very heavy vest full of trinkets.
I bet.
But yeah, man, you're exactly right. It's a quality of life, but it makes the most sense for the mobile hunter and even not, we'll talk to Mark Hatfield, who works for the NWTF as our conservation work director. Make sure I got his title right. Mark's been at it for a long time, and he helped facilitate the Wild Turkey Symposium. And there's a group of professionals that get together, and I'm going to not get it right, but it's basically the turkey hunting safety group, right? They come together and study trends, what makes the most sense. Where do we have a stand on this issue because of safety and hunter safety.
Reaping is what we're talking about.
So that did come up this last one, but so did health, right? So you got a fella or a gal that are going out that are morbidly obese, and people are dropping dead of heart attacks, getting to their tree stand. So like when we talk about physical fitness and your observations and mine as well, and you see these people that are, you want to call them mentors or the words escaping me, but someone that you look up to there, there's definitely good reasons to get your ass moving.
It's a tough sell on the foods component too, because we you see this big trend. There seems to have been a huge shift. My show's one's drop in the bucket in this overall kind of shift towards the food component of hunting. I think we talked about there was this couple of decades where the trophy side was more what was interesting to people, but now that's kind of shifting towards food. Right. But it's a tough sell. We're out there beyond organic, the healthiest meats you can get. But then when people look obese, you're like, well, are you eating it though? Like, and do you eat it, or is it all getting turned to sausage? Like, what's going on here? Because, I just love the idea that in 10 years, when people think about hunters, they're thinking of a whole new group of people. And that includes, people who tend to like to be more fit. I just think that would be a beautiful direction for us to go. And obviously can't project that on everybody or get everybody to sort of just fall in line with it. But I am seeing that. And I think another big component of it has been the Western big game hunters. Cause I mean, that work of packing elk out all the, the guys that I meet that do that, they are trim and they got a gas tank.
Yeah. And so it goes back to what you said, right? The FUD meme of a guy way over his belt and using the quad to get to his box stand, right? In the East and in the Southeast, these are cultural things, right? This is how they hunt versus what you just aptly pointed out. You're hunting at altitude, you're climbing these incredible acute peaks and slopes. You just can't go out there and do that and not be in shape. You're going to break your ankle, right? And you become a liability to the first responders that are out there, to the rangers that are out there, to your hunting party, and never mind pulling the trigger and getting the damn thing out.
Yeah.
So I think they're great examples of, it's one of these, I wouldn't call it peer pressure, but I think as people see it and as it becomes more integrated, like you're saying, I think people just kind of feel like, hey, this is where I want to be. That's how I kind of came to it. I was like, I see all these great men doing things and great women as well. Why am I not? Like, I can do this. I should be doing this. I should be living a more quality life for me first, and then for my kids and my wife. And,
stick around a while, right?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. A buddy of mine, Jake Arvald, who works at First Form, the same thing for him. Like, that was his motivation. He's like, his grandfather died early on him. He's a, Western hunter. And Jake was like, I want to be around for my people. I was like, damn, dude, that's exactly right.
Plus, all these other things. It's like you get up in the morning and things don't hurt like they used to.
Hell yeah.
You can get up and sit down comfortably. Like you said, tying your shoes doesn't make your blood pressure thump in your forehead. Like you eat and you feel like your metabolism's burning the food. Like all the sensations, the joy, I've been seeing this ad pop up when I watch YouTube videos. It's this obese, really pale obese girl. And it's an ad for pharmaceuticals for depression, antidepressants. And she's really overweight, really pale. So you're like, okay, I mean, I guess you can sell this person antidepressants, or like you could get the greatest antidepressant there is, which is just like a little bit of fitness,
Yeah.
It's funny. I've been going to a CrossFit gym with my wife started going. I was kind of like I'm not really like the group activity kind of guy.
Yeah.
But she started going, and then I started going on Saturdays, and now I'm like, I'm preaching about it. I really like it. So, but next door is a Planet Fitness, and my producer goes there. I'm always teasing him about the Purple Palace.
Yeah.
Well, I think if I went into the Purple Palace, hunting's probably not real popular there. But what I wanted to say was there's this cool reciprocal thing, because CrossFit, which tends to draw a little bit more of a kind of a hardcore type of individual, a little more motivated kind of a person. Everybody in there thinks it's super cool that I hunt. And they have, they've never gone down that like vegetarian kind of path anyway. They promote meat eating like in CrossFit, but everyone there seems to think it's really cool. And I think that's neat too, that not only are hunters getting interested in fitness, but it seems like fitness people see, hunting would be because of the nutrition component, because of the time outdoors. And when I'm away, like I was just gone for a few days on this hunt and I can't, I'm not training. You're up at 4 a.m, you get back super late. It's like, you're just not getting any training in. But I always think like, this is what I'm training for. So this is the real thing, not training, and then, but the training seems to facilitate that a lot. So
I'm glad you brought up the mental health aspect of it, man. I wasn't going to go there, but since you brought it up, like, for me, and people that say they don't struggle, I hope you find a way to like admit it, because
be honest.
Every person, that's the first step, right? Is being honest with yourself. But man, I had some things, and gosh, it wasn't a cognizant part of my decision making, but when I got into it and I realized the benefits, outside of changing the look and appearance of my body and how I was feeling tying my shoes and turkey hunting, like all of a sudden my mind started getting right, and I started becoming more pleasurable. My wife will tell you, when we go on a small vacation or something, like I'll bring stuff with me, because I'd rather be addicted to this than addicted to being lazy, right? So there's an obsession there, right? But I think it's healthy. So I'll bring resistance bands or something because I got to move. I have to have a focus set at least for 30 to 40 minutes that I feel like I've worked. And I'm a much happier person. And when I don't, it should be like, go take 30 minutes and go run or,
Dude,
go
that's
move something.
That's it. I got a little zip bag that I got like resistance bands and a jump rope and a few other things in because I'm on the road a lot. And then I never used to, I'd always see the fitness rooms in hotels and be like, yeah, right. Now I find myself in there because I've gotten hooked on I like doing hour-long cardio sessions, low level. So I run a heart rate monitor and I'll do, and I like to watch MMA when I do it. I'll watch UFC fights, super motivating. And so I watch UFC fights and I usually pedal my bike or ride my rower or run or whatever it is. And I'll do an hour, they call it LSD, low, slow duration. Yeah. So anyway, that for me at first was a grind because I didn't like doing 30 minutes of cardio back in the day. But now to me, it's like taking an antidepressant. Like I'll start to feel a little bit off and it's like, I'm grumpy, I'm getting irritable. If I go do that work, man, the
dopamine release is amazing.
It's incredible. And then I feel good then when I eat, I feel good when I put my clothes on, I just feel good. So anyway, I think that's a piece that I obviously can't force that onto hunting, but I sure want to do my part to help to bring that in. Cause, and I think that's just going to come with the change in the times, like we were talking about, new demographics.
You're always going to have your detractors, and those are the same guys that are not getting after it. And those are personal choices. So if that makes you happy being a keyboard warrior and being a douche online, I mean, all the power to you, I suppose. But at the end of the day, you're not paying my bills. You're not writing checks to me. So your opinion is kind of null and void. So,
well, I remember I went down south a couple of years ago with some guys, a whole group of us drove down and three of these guys were really obese. They're all driving in a truck together. It might've been four of them. And they're pulling a trailer that says Buck Dynasty on it. And they got freezers in the trailer. We're going down to North Carolina to hunt deer and bear and some other things. And these guys weren't movers, And I remember going down there and, I get a bear, I get a deer, I go out and get like 20 squirrels. I'm hunting I'm just balls out hunting. But these guys were the type to sit somewhere. And I remember they brought this trailer with all these freezers and they came home with nothing. And it was because the fitness limited their ability to go a little bit further and make it happen. And so that's, I think, it'd be one thing if you could easily be successful and be out of shape, but it's hard because, there's a lot of pressure in the woods right now. Like you said, since COVID and to your point before about the food shortages and how quick things go sideways, as we learned, I mean, I I personally think I'm of the opinion that until about 2030, we're not out of the woods here. I think I keep joking about next year being the Hunger Games because there's been major disruptions to fertilizer production and major disruptions to food production, very low crop yields this year and going into low crop yields next year with no fertilizer. So around the world, I mean, I think here we're largely insulated, but a lot of the world's going to be, maybe some food crises. And I think that's just going to drive a lot more people into this pursuit. And I think what you indicated before, it's not like people went hunting because they were starving to death. People went hunting because they realized how they were very dependent on a fragile system and that hunting doesn't just make you robust, it makes you anti-fragile. So that if things go wrong, you actually are in a position of strength. And I think that desire to have that. Yeah, exactly, man.
For sure.
Well, that American spirit.
Being self-sufficient, self-reliance, that's a big freaking deal, especially when you're in the Hunger Games. And it's funny, man, I've been using the same language. The Hunger Games.
Funny, I go Hunger Games.
That's what it feels like, right? Yeah. I mean, there's just so much you listen to the news this morning, it's like, holy smokes, like all these geopolitical situations that will directly affect so much.
Yeah, too bad they're not issuing black swan tags because the population's high. Oh man, that's funny. Hey, changing gears real quick because this is dark territory. People know what we're saying. I got to hunt in Molokai, Hawaii this year. And I had this great guy who put us up in a hunting lodge high up in altitude for the island. It's not the altitude's not crazy there, but we were high up on a hill, and every day when I'd come in, there was turkeys, man. And I was like, like you said before, you said there's 49 states with turkeys. I was like, Hawaii has turkeys,
Yeah.
and then Molokai, which is like this arid, just dusty, like, man, the island has been largely denuded by all of the axis deer there and
Yep.
the former cattle and whatnot. But there was turkeys, and I could never figure out like what subspecies they were.
Miriam's.
They are mirrors. So I
Mhm.
was just wondering if you could talk to folks who are not aware. Okay, let's say somebody's listening to this and they hunt turkeys, but they're not really tuned into where it all can go. I was just wondering if you could talk about that Grand Slam and the World Slam a little bit, because that stuff's
Sure.
fascinating for folks who want to experience turkeys in all of their different range. And just tell people what that is and like what that looks like.
Yeah. So in the lower 48, we have a Grand Slam, which consists of a harvesting of the subspecies of wild turkey. So you have your Easterns, your Rio Grandes, Miriam's turkey, and your Osceola. The Osceola tends to be the hardest and most expensive because it's only in one spot of the country,
Florida, right?
And it's in Florida, and not all of Florida, right? So it's in that sweet spot that actually I think Ian just totally decimated. It was Osceola country. So a lot of outfitter friends down there, praying for them and hoping that their land didn't get totally washed away. But yeah, I mean, so that's Osceola territory there. Easterns abound. I know Washington State is unique. They have a three species slam over there. There are
in Washington, there's 3 species.
In Washington State, they have remote
Wow.
populations of Easterns, and then they also boast Rios and Miriams. So that's a unique state to hunt. And then for your world, you have Gould's turkeys, and then you have jungle bird by way of the ocellated, not to be confused with the Osceola. Completely different looking bird, really cool, doesn't gobble, does this jungle whistle.
So Gould's is not in the 48?
So they have them in parts of Arizona,
But they're in then Mexico,
New Mexico, but they're primarily Old Mexico. And you need to draw
I didn't realize there was that one.
Yeah, you need to draw a tag. That's part of your royal slam is getting that Gould.
Okay.
And that's a beautiful bird. But
all right. But this oscillated. Now I want to talk about that because
Yeah.
I've been looking at guides down in the Yucatan. I mean, I know I've spent some time down in the Yucatan, in Tulum and a few other places, and got to, check out Chichen Itza and, the ruins and all of that. But now that I know there's like a hunt down there, and then that bird, if I could try to describe it to the viewer, the listener, imagine you took a peafowl, like a peacock,
yes,
and you pushed it into a turkey's body form.
That's exactly right.
Right? I mean, it's even got, and I believe the word oscillated refers to eye-like, and all of its tail fan feathers at the tips have what look like eyes, just like a peacock. And so
beautiful,
smaller bird, but incredibly iridescent and just gorgeous, right? But what do they must weigh like 12 pounds or something?
Yeah, they're smaller bodied, smaller weight. They have the blue head as opposed to the red, white, and blue faces that we have. And then they have these little yellow warts on them that are pretty unique as well. And they have giant spurs, giant razor-looking hooks on them.
Cool.
Yeah, but no beards on the male birds,
Right.
which was different. And they do they don't gobble. A lot of predators in the jungle, especially big jungle cats.
Yeah, right.
Gobble.
Yeah.
So they got this. You have to Google the audio of an oscillated. I couldn't even try it if I wanted to. It's a very unique sound.
Now
Whistle, thump thing.
All of the including the Goulds, all these other birds are subspecies of the same species of turkey.
Right.
So if we said the wild turkey, we're talking about one species, but there's 5 subspecies, and you see some variance in the coloration and everything.
That's right.
Is the oscillated a different species? Different genus, or
I'd have to look it up. They think. See,
I thought in the past they were. I thought in
the
the past they were in a different genus altogether. But recently I looked them up and I was like, oh, I think it's the same genus. Because they move things around in the taxonomy a lot,
right?
But so that makes it is that a world slam?
So that would be your world slam. Well, yes, that would be the world.
World slam. Yeah, I'm very interested in that.
So many of them now. It's kind of getting ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. It's all, and it's a bit silly to me. Like the sound of the name of it's like a little ridiculous. But I love the idea of going down to the Yucatan and hunting. So I'm just fascinated by the idea, and I find myself just on Google Images constantly looking at that bird.
Yeah, it's neat. And I think the World Slam should include, actual World Slams. So where there's huntable population. So I'm talking your Canadian provinces, going over to New Zealand and running the Lord of Rings trail and killing Merriams over there.
They have them over there, huh? Cool.
Yep.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's really neat.
It's just such a cool bird, man. And I think it's a good, we talked before about new hunter recruitment, and it just seems like a really good place for people to start. I made an episode of my TV show this year, so this will come out somewhere in the beginning of the year with my wife, and we did this really fun thing to train her up because this was her first hunt. She'd never really wanted to hunt before, and then suddenly she decides she wants to hunt turkeys. And she's thinking about like, well, I'm kind of nervous about the shotgun. I've never, she shoots pistols, and I've had her shoot ARs and stuff like that. But the 12 gauge was a little intimidating to her, and so she wanted to shoot it. So I thought, okay, let's make this as real as we can. So I set up a full mock hunt where I had my decoys out, and I had set up 2 logs. It was a piece of beech with a piece of white birch sitting on the top to simulate a turkey head, like a white turkey head. And we got in position. We wore ghillie suits. I was calling. I was using a gobble call. I made it like this was a real hunt, and here comes the bird. And then she had to shoot that birch log off the top of that beech log. So we filmed all that, this like mock hunt. And then we went out. Yeah, it was really cool because I just wanted her, when we actually did the hunt, all that stuff's out of the way. She's like, it knows what to expect completely. So then when we went out to hunt, it largely played out like that. And it was like the same experience for her. So she could, she knew what to expect. And anyway, she harvested her first bird this year, and it was just so cool to experience that with my wife. But I just see turkey hunting as a really great place for people to get started who want to hunt. And, I just think like a good place for recruitment to begin. So
it really is the perfect set of circumstances. The time of year is pleasant in most areas. You're early on, there's not a lot of bugs, it's just a pleasurable time. And the interaction, conversely, I said the worst thing you can do is take someone whitetail hunting for the first time. Like, just don't waste your time. You're going to ruin them and never bring them back. But turkey hunting, you may never get them to stop calling you to take them turkey hunting.
Exactly.
And some of us never leave it. Then we just continue to turkey hunt because there's nothing better, right?
So. Yeah. And, not having the scent component to think about, because I think for the average person who's new to it, scent is this sense that human beings don't really we don't use as much. So the idea that it suddenly becomes this huge focal point, it's overwhelming to think about your scent. But with turkeys, where you don't have to think about that, it's visual for them largely, and that's how we are. So it's sort of like intuitive. Yeah. Like, don't move, freeze. Like, that's easy for people who haven't hunted before, like to figure that component out versus thinking about their clothes and their breath and like the wind direction and all that. It just seems like a great place to start. You guys must be seeing at the National Wild Turkey Federation, just like what is the state of the hunting culture around turkeys right now? Is it still in a growth phase? Because it seems like it has been for some years now.
It's hard for me to put my finger on, right? Because we talk about this statistic, right? I mean, this is anecdotal, I guess, to our membership, but there's supposedly 3 million licensed turkey hunters on a given year. Of that, we can't really, the way the states report who's actually turkey hunting, because some big game tags just come with turkey tags, so you're not really sure who's actually out there doing it. As it relates to our membership, we think we should have 3.1 million members, right? If you're a turkey hunter or you're buying a turkey tag, you should be a member. But so the two don't correlate. So there's some of that. Some of the states are better reporting, and they're coming up with ways that aren't going to cost the hunter much financially, so they can just track this and self-identify who's out there. But as a pursuit, it would seem like the trends are positive for turkey hunting and people getting interested for the reasons we just espoused, right? What's hard for some folks, though, is it's not an all-day pursuit. Like your state and Massachusetts and some others, you don't have Sundays, so it's a very short season.
But but I know you're like hating on Maine here, but we can hunt.
I'm not hating. I love Maine.
We can hunt past noon, y'all, in New Hampshire.
That is true. I don't know if again that I yield to the wildlife biologist doesn't mean I think they're right, right?
I don't really get it, but okay. Well, it's got to stop at
I
noon.
will hate on Massachusetts, though. I have no problem doing
Yeah,
that.
I can do that easily too. That's one of my favorite pastimes. Oh man. What about as far as like I just want to give you some space to sort of plug the membership as well, because I just think it's so important people get involved and feel involved, like feel that they have skin in the game a little bit, and having a membership to something like that is important.
It's huge, right? And you kind of hit on this at the beginning of the conversation, and we've talked about this on my program and other stuff that, the today's conservation, the easiest thing and kind of the laziest thing at this point in 2022 that a hunter can say is, I have a hunting license. I'm a conservationist. Okay. Are you? Because like maybe 10 years ago that flew, but it doesn't anymore. And I would agree with you that, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I'm not trying to be controversial, but when you have less than 7% of the population across the entire country that hunts, to have skin in the game, to contribute to groups like the National Wild Turkey Federation or some of the other nonprofits that may not be species specific or are species specific, and that's your bag too. Like at least giving back in that way, to know that those dollars, like specifically for us, when you buy a membership, there's some fulfillment, there's the magazine and some of the other, administrative costs, right? But on average, the dollars that get rolled into the mission delivery are matched 5-1. So a dollar now becomes $5. We just posted an article. I want to say it was there was a whole pile of money that got approved for research in Florida that was matched 24-1.
Wow.
So your dollar has huge power. Right. So it doesn't just mean it's $35. You get your bi-monthly magazine, some stickers, and free entry to convention in Nashville once a year, and discounted tickets to events. Your money, like your voice, is magnified by the community in which you find yourself in. So again, for us, it's an average of 5-1 match, and sometimes above when we work with partners and we work with other agencies to pool that money together so we can do amazing things. And we got the Big Sky Forestry Initiative coming that we had a press release on that, more information coming out about that to help alleviate the fire load in Big Sky country, which, here in the East, people don't even not think about wildfires, but that's a big freaking deal out West.
Yeah. And
what does that mean for habitat and, basically just people living and not having their house burned down? So you're getting more cooperative revenue resources coming together and being matched and being pulled together to do really amazing things on the landscape. So, don't look at it as this box you check, like, oh, I'm going to get a membership and get my sticker for my truck kind of thing. Like, your money has power. And then more importantly, your voice has power. So when you look at, the gun organizations that tout, we have 2.5 million members. Well, guess what that means when it comes to advocating for people at the national and local level? Those 2.5 million people are 2.5 million votes. They're obviously active because they're purposely giving their money to an organization like that. Likewise, the NWTF, if you're donating your $35 to us because you appreciate the mission, you appreciate what we do and love what we do as far as mission delivery, your voice now becomes matched with all those other hundreds of thousands of people that agree with you. And then our representatives in the legislative space, in the policymaking space, can take 200,000 voices for the NWTF and say, hey, these people matter and they do vote. They're voting with their dollar by joining us. You should look at these issues we have coming up, and most of the time they're very bipartisan issues, right? So there's not a left or right or center. It's just what's right for our organization. And
that's a good point. When you're part of like a gun organization, so like, I'm a lifetime NRA member. It's got a very strong political lilt, but you don't see that in the National Wild Turkey Federation. It feels quite clean from that kind of stuff, you know? And that's kind of refreshing.
It should, right? I mean, I have plenty of friends. I talk about this all the time that, I know they voted for Bernie Sanders and, politically we may not line up. But that's okay, because that's not where we're focused on. Our friendship isn't focused on who we pulled the lever for. It's because, we like each other, one. And then two, our passion for the outdoors and conservation. And we can, even the anti-hunters, I talk about this quite a bit myself, is that, the anti-hunter who hates our guts and hates what we do, like if you sit down and talk to them, we agree on like 98%
of everything
until we get to how we consume it, right? I want to eat it. You want to take pictures of it. That's how you consume it. That's how I consume it. But everything up until that point, you shoot with your camera. I shoot with my gun.
Yeah.
We're good.
Remember back in the day when these things weren't like enough to, you could just be, it didn't matter. I just remember growing up at a time where we weren't divided like this,
constantly qualifying your speech. And it's just, or
not even daring to speech. I also want to go back to what you said about like, I buy a hunting license, I'm a conservationist. It's kind of like saying, I'm very involved in children's education because I have a cell phone plan and there's a school tax. It's
right. I buy my scratch tickets. Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, I don't think that really. So I think at this point, being aligned with other people, it's going to be important because we're going to have a bit of an uphill slog. I think keeping hunting, dare I say, legal in the next couple decades as we head towards sort of Agenda 2030. We're going to want to make sure that this stays alive.
It's a weird thing, and I've had a hard time locally dialing this in. Even when I sat on the board of commissioners, I was a Stratford County commissioner for the New Hampshire State Fish and Game for a little bit before COVID, before my life got turned upside down with homeschooling and such. But trying to engage legislators to, first of all, understand why it's important to have state constitutional amendments to guarantee hunting, fishing, trapping rights, because not every state has that. And if it's not a right, they can take it away. And so me personally, I'm an advocate for adjusting those state constitutions. I believe, don't quote me on this, I want to say it's right around 30 states in the union have amended their state constitutions to make at least hunting and angling. Trapping always becomes the black sheep of the group, but at least hunting and angling are right. Some law enforcement will sit there and tell you, well, if it's a right, how do we penalize people, or how do we take it away? Well, that's the whole point. You can't take it away. People should have the right to hunt and fish. Yeah. Again, smarter people with more legislative and more law practice can answer those questions, but there's 30 other states figuring it out. Copy and paste that thing and move on. Every state.
Anybody who if you don't know off the top of your head, no worries, I'll figure it out. But is there anybody you know of I talked to about this? I haven't really thought about this issue.
Brent Miller, I believe, at the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. He was in Vermont. I don't know. I know he got I know he's not a regional guy. He's working for the DC office now. He might still be in Vermont, but Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, they're a big legislative arm. They work at that stuff.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I like that idea of sort of I guess enshrining it constitutionally, because I'm just concerned about where this heads over time when you see some of the political unfoldings in our world. Right. But man, it's been really great talking to you. I feel
thanks for the opportunity,
man. Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. And this seems like I'd like to catch up with you more on this. Maybe get a workout in and a hunt sometime.
Heck yeah. I'd be totally down for that.
Cool, man. Well, any kind of closing thoughts that you have for folks, or anywhere you want to send them?
nwtf.org. I'd invite you we're very active socially: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, if you're in that professional cabal. No, I'm kidding. LinkedIn's fine. All social channels. Check out our YouTube channel. We got a lot of stuff going up there weekly. The different film series we have up there, and then go sign up for membership, man. I mean, like you said, $35, a couple cups of coffee in a week at Starbucks. You can parlay that into feeling good about yourself, getting a really nice publication twice a month, and being a part of something bigger.
Habitat, man. Supporting habitat. It's like turkey habitat is habitat for everything else.
Everything.
It's right? Habitat. So it's like, that's it. It's deer. It's bear. It's like everybody likes turkey habitat. Everybody likes
your non-game species that, even your little warblers and your spotted salamanders appreciate it.
Amen, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
For sure,
I hope
brother.
people go pick up that membership, and I'll keep pushing that as well, because I think it's so important.
Thank you. All right, brother.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. You can help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh new content. Have a podcast guest or topic suggestion, or maybe a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host the WildFed TV show for? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. wildfed.com. If you still haven't seen season 1 or 2 of the WildFed TV show, go to myoutdoortv.com, grab yourself a free trial subscription, and then check out all 20 episodes. Season 3 of WildFed premieres on Outdoor Channel in early 2023. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out our store for WildFed shirts, hoodies, hats, stickers, and more. WildFed. Food is all around you.